What is the end of seeking? I wonder, is that a phrase you've heard? I've heard it before in spiritual circles. The end of seeking. You reach a point at which there is no more seeking. Seeking after what? Enlightenment, presumably. So, here's a mistake that you can make, right? You're searching for enlightenment, okay? You don't know what that is yet, but you think it's out there and you're searching for it. And then, after a lot of frustration because you haven't been able to find it, you hear about this thing called the end of seeking. So then you think, oh, if I just stop seeking for it, there'll be a light bulb moment and it'll all make sense and I'll be enlightened. No, you won't, because the decision to stop seeking is a subtle form of seeking. So that puts you in a real bind. So then you're thinking, well, okay, well, there's nothing I can do about that. So I'm stuck. It's always going to be out of reach to me. What's always going to be out of reach? This strange mythical thing called enlightenment, right? To me, the end of seeking is the realization that there was no enlightenment. There is no enlightenment. And that comes when you've done sufficient work to realize that this religion, that religion, they don't work. This guru, that guru, always seems to be something lacking. And more fundamentally than that, there's the understanding that the human experience of consciousness is always an experience of limitation. Severe limitation, I would say, in comparison to what? In comparison to, say, omniscience, some cosmic godlike consciousness that knows the whole game from beginning to end. What have we got? We've got this little narrow window of perception and this really narrow ability of cognition. That one isn't noticed so much, the fact that actual thinking is a limited exercise. There may well be things about reality that the human brain simply cannot process, just like a goldfish can't process quantum mechanics equations, right? Just like a dolphin jumping out of the sea, catching a glimpse of the night sky, can't really ever know anything about black holes and about the orbital patterns of planets around a sun. It just can't know that. So the human experience, both perceptive and cognitive, is limited. So this idea that there's somebody out there or some teaching out there, they have the thing you're looking for, is never going to happen. Yeah, I mean, I think there's work to be done. You know, we can understand interesting things about consciousness if we study neuroscience, if we study even parapsychology. I think there's a lot of interesting things to learn, but you're not going to understand fundamentally what it is, because it seems to be tied to the ground of being. We're faced with the hard problem of being unable to understand what we are as consciousness. That's never going to be penetrated. How could it? There's the analogy of the eye, you know. The eye can't see itself because the eye is the thing that's doing the seeing. So consciousness can't understand itself because consciousness is the ground from which understanding proceeds. Think of it that way, right? So the end of seeking is the giving up of the quest for enlightenment, and it's the realization that to one extent or another, this is as good as it gets. You know, people are on a kind of quest sometimes for altered states of consciousness, as if that's going to be the answer. And there can be interesting states of consciousness. I've had them myself. States where you feel surrounded by love. I don't even negate that such a thing is authentic. But it's not. Those states of consciousness are not generally where we live in day-to-day life, where we're concerned with matters of survival and competition against others. That's a necessary part of life. I think people who are into non-duality sometimes forget that non-duality exists in everything, not just in the love, not just in all the nice feelings. It exists in everything. The heroes and the villains are both manifestations of non-duality. I mean, the lion's experience of non-duality, and by that I just mean the lion's ordinary experience of being a lion, involves harming other conscious creatures and stealing their energy. There is simply no way to be a lion without hurting and killing other creatures that cry out in panic and pain when they're hunted by the lion. That's all natural. I don't hear very many non-duality teachers trying to integrate a thing like that into their understanding of the universe. No, they tend to sit with a little vase of flowers beside them, or a big picture of the woods behind them, never pointing out that the woods is basically a killing field, right? There's all sorts of creatures in the undergrowth running around, killing each other, stealing each other's energy to survive. All of that is the manifestation of non-duality, because nature is non-dual. And I'm pausing there because I'm trying to express this in a way that makes you understand that non-duality is not a separate thing from everything that's happening right now. And again, this ties into the end of seeking, because you're not trying to get anywhere other than right here, right now, as the ground of being, manifesting as a human being with an ordinary state of consciousness. Just this. It's just this. It's not that there's the duality here and the non-duality in some hidden realm that you have to reach. This is the non-duality. I mean, it goes deeper than what you see. There's definitely some strange machinations going on under the surface, and there's definitely higher orders of consciousness. Otherwise, how did the universe manifest at all? You know, this ordered place. But something put all this in motion, something that's not separate from all this. That's the key thing. And your role as one little manifestation of the ground of being is just to be what you are. It's that simple. So I'm not seeking anything other than to maintain this experience that I have here. I'm certainly interested in altered states of consciousness. I'm interested in parapsychology. But I don't expect them to be providing some kind of big answer to me. It's just an interesting thing that I can do with life. See, the quest for enlightenment, it's kind of funny because you have this idea that there's a thing called enlightenment, but you don't know what it is. Right? So if you did know what it was, you'd already be enlightened because you'd have the knowledge. You see? This is the trick. People make you think there's a real thing that you haven't yet found. Yeah, I mean, there is the integration of the understanding of non-duality. There are people who understand non-duality, there are people who don't. I guess there is that divide. But it doesn't change just being here as a human being doing this. Anthony de Mello had an interesting analogy. He was, I mean, it's been so long since I listened to Anthony de Mello's talks, but he came out with this line where he was talking about a person who was searching for enlightenment all the time, and he was talking to a particular teacher, and he just couldn't get it. He couldn't get it. He went away, and then that teacher happened to come across this guy maybe 2 or 3 years later, and he goes, "Oh, how's it going? How's the quest going?" And the guy goes, "Oh, what does it matter?" And then the teacher went, "Right, you're starting to get it now." You see, he'd reached the point where it was all so frustrating that he hadn't found the thing he was looking for. He's close to the point of realizing that it didn't exist. You see, and one of the things I've said in my book is that I went on a spiritual journey only to find out that I didn't have to go on a spiritual journey. But it's still good to go on that journey, because the realization that I went on the journey, found out what was at the end of it, and it brought me full circle back to ordinary life. It's good to have that understanding. That's a better understanding than to think, oh, poor me, I'm unenlightened. I wish I was enlightened. I don't know if I ever will be. Hang on. Sneeze coming. Okay, it's away. It's gone. So you see what I mean? The end of seeking, as far as I understand it, is just this idea that you're never going to be anywhere other than right here, right now, doing what you're doing. In an ordinary state of consciousness, there's nothing to find. And you know, even if there was enlightenment round the corner, like let's say I discover enlightenment when I'm 50, which is like a year from now, almost, a year and a bit. What am I going to do with it? What, have I got 20 more years to live, maybe? So what's it for? I'm just going to die anyway, aren't I? See what I mean? No, the life for me is just about understanding that we all want to be happy, right? But the older you get, the more you can understand that happiness actually lies in being of service to other people, to the people that you care about. I don't mean, I'm not talking about universal love or anything like that, or being kind to everybody that you meet, because then you can be victimized very easily. But because not everybody has your best interests at heart. But just loving the people that life puts in your path, as friends, as family members. In our early years, we try to make happiness work through obtaining, whether it's possessions or experiences. But it doesn't work. And some people try that game the whole way through life until they die. And that's kind of sad, because you don't reach it. No matter how many toys you have, you're never going to be happy. It seems that once we establish a sort of stable level of affluence, anything, and by affluence I really just mean, you've got some security in your life, you've got a roof over your head, you've got good food and some entertainment and some good relationships. There you go. Affluence probably isn't the right word, but that's what I mean. Once you establish that, anything that you add to that in terms of, having more and more possessions, it's actually counterproductive to happiness, because the possessions take possession of you. There's that line in Fight Club where it says, the things you used to own, now they own you, because everything you own is a thing that has to be maintained. And if you place value on it, you're going to want to maintain it. And it has you. It has you then. A life full of treasures. You have to keep looking after them. Make sure nobody takes them. Make sure they don't get broken. None of that is productive towards happiness. But a gesture of kindness towards another person, and suddenly you feel a strange glow. You see? It really is that simple. I honestly wish I was kinder in my life than I am, but I don't want to make excuses, but having no immediate family means there's no real support structure in my life, so I'm kind of always in survival mode. Even though I have savings, I do have some concerns about, work, because my job has been threatened a little bit over the years. So I'm just always in survival mode. That may change in a few years, we'll see. But, life is okay. Life is okay. I'm perfectly happy. No, I'm not perfectly happy. I'm happy enough not being enlightened. And when I watch non-duality videos on YouTube, I'm frequently disappointed, if I'm honest. And I'm not trying to tout myself as some kind of great teacher. I'm just on the lookout for teachers who are realistic, and so few of them are. So many of them seem superficial to me, not dealing with reality. But reality is all you've got, and reality is adversarial. think a lot of these people, both the teacher and quite often the audience, they're just bored, affluent Westerners who are just unhappy with their life and looking for something more. And they're not really facing, for the most part, any real adversity in their life. I mean, for the most part, our lives are pretty calm and untroubled. So you go searching for spirituality, and then you think you've found enlightenment, but you fail to realize that, you know, your enlightenment does not care about the fact that somebody could burgle your house and kill you in your sleep, or chase you down a dark alley and rape you, or torture you or something. You know, nature does not stop any horrible things from happening. And I just don't hear non-duality teachers talking about this side of things. You know, it seems more to me like a lot of them are trying to teach a way for you to escape the human experience. I heard Eckhart Tolle say at one time that people turn to this message whenever they've had enough of suffering. Sorry, but suffering is part of the package, simply because to be human is to have a sensitive body and a sensitive mind, which is sensitive to pleasure and happiness. Just like, and if you want those things, if you want life to have that sort of color to it, you have to be prepared for the possibility of the opposite, which is great bodily pain or mental anguish. It's all part of it. You don't get to have one without the possibility of the other. Naturally, we try to strive for one side of that equation and not the other, but it doesn't always work out that way. I mean, I can't remember if I've showed you folks this yet in another video, but check out my big scar. Can you see that? All the way up to there. That's from a bicycle accident, and a very little movement in this shoulder currently compared to this one, you know. So my life has been pain since the start of January, but I'm still smiling and I'm on the mend. But I didn't expect to fall off my bicycle and fracture my shoulder in 3 places. But the universe certainly allowed that, didn't it? There's no getting out of the human experience. So to be enlightened is just to realize that you're the ground of being behind the human experience. But you mustn't use that understanding to insulate yourself from the human experience, because you can't. You can't. I mean, Eckhart Tolle can talk about the fact that, you know, there's a kind of distance between the source, he calls it being. You know, it's almost like your identity is further back than here with the creature. And that's true, but you still feel everything the creature feels intimately. You know, you can go back there and you can say, oh, I noticed that Darrell Sloan is feeling pain today. As if you can somehow insulate yourself from that. You can't. You can't. I'd love to strap Eckhart Tolle to a chair and maybe torture him a little bit. Like put a candle under his hand or something, you know. See how long he maintains that sort of, that pose, that he can't be ruffled by anything, that he's being itself, totally insulated from any suffering of the body. No, don't try to use spirituality to get out of your misery. If you're in misery, deal with the misery as a human being. You know, some people's view of non-duality, it's so depersonal. I was going to start on something else, but you know what, I'll save it for another video. Another video called The Non-Duality Pod People, which is coming soon. Okay, take care folks. The sky